Now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com. Joining us right now from OU Insider. He's also a Sports Talk host for Sports Talk 1400 KREF in Norman. It's James Hale. How you doing, James?
Hey, I'm doing great, Bryan. How are you?
Doing great. Looking forward to a huge ball game this weekend between Oklahoma and Notre Dame. What's it like around Norman right now?
Well, there's as much anticipation about this game than I can remember for a non-conference game. Back in '86, Ohio State came to town, and that was really cool at that time. Ohio State, I think, was ranked number 1 in the country. OU was ranked 3rd, but it would turn out that was kind of the beginning of the renaissance as OU was coming back from, 3 straight 3-loss seasons, and that was a year that Oklahoma was playing a bunch of young players that eventually would go on to win national championships a couple of years later, or the following year and the next 2 years. But this game, because of the history of the two teams around here, there's been a ton of talk about it as soon as it was announced it was going to be on the schedule. And as it turns out, now that the fact that it's late in the season or later in the season, Game 7, instead of when OU normally plays their non-conference games in September, has created even more of a buzz. It's going to be 45 degrees at game time, 7 o'clock kick. ABC is going to have their number 1 crew. It's going to be seen across the entire nation. And so there's great anticipation. And then the fact that OU fans just hate Notre Dame.
Everybody hates Notre Dame.
Well, yeah, I wonder about that sometimes. Notre Dame seems to thumb their nose at the rest of college football quite a bit, and they have their own network. And there's just a lot of things about Notre Dame that if you're not a Notre Dame fan, you can find to dislike. But this is one team that has had their number against OU. OU is 1-8 against them throughout their history.
Wow.
And OU and Notre Dame and Southern Cal are two teams that I think are elite programs like OU across the country, and yet those two teams have pretty much handled Oklahoma when they've gone head-to-head. So, yeah, there's a great buzz. This is going to be the most anticipated non-conference game, I think, certainly in the modern era and maybe in the history of OU. I mean, Notre Dame came to OU back in '56. OU beat them 40-0. The next year, Notre Dame came. Actually, OU went to Notre Dame in '56. Then in '57, Notre Dame came in and broke the 47-game winning streak.
And people are still bitter about it in Norman, right?
Yeah. Well, OU should have won the game that day. They had opportunities. They turned the ball over. It's interesting how football doesn't really change. You turn the ball over, you commit more penalties than you normally do, and you don't take advantage of the opportunities you have, and you lose the game. OU lost that game in '57. OU lost to Kansas State this year in a similar fashion.
James Hale from OU Insider, part of the 247sports.com network, talking about OU and Notre Dame. The Oklahoma team, up until the Texas game, I just wasn't sure about OU. They had lost to K-State. Landry Jones was struggling. What changed?
Well, they had a come to Jesus meeting, so to speak, during the off week, especially offensively, and they determined what they wanted to be. I think up to that point they were searching and scratching and trying to find out what they wanted to be. And even though I think at the start of the year they had an idea, they didn't execute it. They didn't really try to become that. They wanted to become a power, run-first type team and take advantage of their strong-armed future NFL quarterback and play action off that to a great group of receivers. Instead, they were still throwing the ball a bunch. Even though Damian Williams was breaking off some long runs, they weren't consistently sticking with the run game. And then against Kansas State, Trey Millard, who Bob Stoops has often said is their best all-around football player, he's their fullback, didn't get into the game until the third series against Kansas State. And really, I think he played 13 plays. And I think that, Bob stuck his head in the offensive meeting and said, you guys need to figure out a way to get, number 33 on the field a bunch and start using him because that's what I want. And Josh Heupel and his staff, to their credit, they've done just that. Oklahoma came out of that, a more determined football team, a football team that was determined to salvage the season and still have a great year. And as Landry Jones said many times, there's a lot of teams that have been in that national championship game with one loss, and they knew they could still win the conference championship game if somebody, could equal the field and somebody beat Kansas State. So far, nobody's been able to do that. But now they're running the ball. Damian Williams is one of the best running backs in the country. They have a good stable of running backs. Jalen Saunders, a transfer from Fresno State, is a future NFL player. It's like getting a first-round draft choice, so the wide receiver core just got deeper. And Landry Jones has played at a high level since the Kansas State game. So they just decided what they were going to be, and they've gone out and executed, and they played 3 really good games in a row.
Now I'm guessing that they wish they had that Kansas State game to do over again, right?
Sure. They should have won the game. They turned the ball over at the 1, gave Kansas State a chippy. They fumble at the 1 out of the belldozer. It was even controversial that the belldozer was in because Damian Williams had run them all downfield, and Damian has always been his own touchdown guy. And so there was a little bit of dissension, a little bit of controversy at the time, bitterness, and Kansas State won the fourth quarter. Oklahoma still could have won it in the fourth quarter, but Kansas State won the fourth quarter. You give him credit. Klein is a really solid leader, an individual quarterback. And, though you'd like to play that game again, but you don't get do-overs.
How big a deal was it? How surprised were you at the way they manhandled Texas 2 weeks ago?
Well, I certainly didn't pick that. I didn't see that coming. But Oklahoma defensively has really grown up. Under Mike Stoops, this defense now has the swagger it used to have in the early days of the Stoops era, where they go into the game, and even though it's a great offensive conference, they go into the game believing they're going to shut out the opponent and win the game defensively if they have to. And they just manhandled Texas on both sides of the ball. The good thing to come out of that game, and this is the game within the game sometimes that you find when you really study games, is that OU's tackles, which were considered average at best coming into the game. Lane Johnson, a senior on the left side, Darrell Williams, a sophomore on the right side, Tyson Thompson, who's the third tackle of offensive, is a sophomore. They manhandled Jackson Jeffcoat and Okafor and won that battle, and nobody saw that coming. And then, of course, Texas is so weak on defense that Oklahoma's offense just had a field day. So, this Oklahoma team has really come of age. There's not right now, it's hard to see if they have a weakness because, on special teams, they're great in the returns with Justin Brown and Roy Finch and Brendan Clay on kickoff, Justin Brown on punts, and OU's at the top of the conference in coverage on both kicks and punts. So this is a really good football team right now with a franchise quarterback, a great core of receivers, talented running backs, and a defense that believes they're as good as anybody in the country.
I have to ask you because Trey McTwire, of course, is one of our own from White House, just a few miles from Tyler. How's he progressing?
Well, the coaches love him. He's playing great. He's in a very crowded wide receiver situation. He started every game until last week when Saunders earned his eligibility 2 weeks ago. Now Saunders is in the starting lineup, and that's just understandable. Saunders, came out of Fresno State, one of the elite receivers in the country, the WAC Player of the Year, and it's going to be hard to hold him out of the lineup. So they go with Stills and Justin Brown, a transfer from Penn State. And that's what's happened to all those young receivers. Nobody saw Justin Brown coming into the program. Nobody saw Jalen Saunders coming into the program. If not, Trey would be a solid starter and starting every game. Now he'll be the fourth receiver coming off the bench, but they love his work ethic. They love his potential. He's had some really good moments so far. His future is bright. Before it's all said and done, he'll be another one of those first-round draft choices, and he'll be another one of those All-American type players. He's that kind of talent.
One other question. How big is the reinstatement of defensive tackle Stacey McGee out of the Sooner defense?
Well, the Sooners are back at full strength now defensively, Bryan, and they haven't played full strength all year. So they just get better. I mean, at times, Stacey's their best defensive tackle. Now, Jamarcus McFarland and Casey Walker have played at a high level, but Casey's only been back 2 weeks. But McFarland has played at a high level. That allows them to move David King and keep him outside at defensive end. And the Sooners have, now 273-pound, 264-pound defensive ends. So that defensive line just gets a little bit better. And Stacey will be a great addition to that defense without question the rest of the season.
Well, it ought to be a great football game. It's going to have an opportunity to really shake up the BCS, too, if Oklahoma knocks off Notre Dame, which I would think they're favored in the ball game.
Yeah, they're favored by 7. I think OU's going to win. OU's got better skill talent, and this is a rare time Notre Dame doesn't match up with a team speed-wise. Boy, they do in the down lines, but they don't speed-wise. So if Oklahoma can battle to a draw on the down lines, Oklahoma's got a lot more ability at wide receiver, running back, and in the secondary.
It's good stuff. James Hale, thanks very much for coming on with us. We love reading your stuff on OU Insider on 247sports.com. We really appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks, Bryan. You guys have a great day.
You too, buddy. Thank you. That's James Hale on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM.